Good Friday afternoon, everybody. Hope that you're having a nice, restful Friday afternoon as we wrap things up and get ready for a big, big weekend of sports television and all kinds of information coming out here. And really, it's one of those. It's the opening of the NFL season. It's the U.S. Open Finals, and it's week two, if you count it that way, and don't count week zero of the college football season. We also have a buddy of mine who's dropped by, and it's good to see him. Let's bring in Jason Watkins. Jason has his own outstanding show, and the man we like to call the Coos. Hey, Jason, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, what's up? How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing well. I was just talking about the fact that this is going to be a TV viewer's dream weekend because there's all kinds of stuff going on, no matter whether you're a football fan, baseball fan, tennis fan, soccer fan. I mean, pretty much anything that you enjoy. There's going to be a lot of it this week. So that's a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, football season is back. It's always fun when football season
Yeah.
is playing. I'm
This is
excited for
true.
it.
This is true.
Yeah.
Hey, one of the things that I like to talk about, I mean, we'll talk about the games coming up. I'll put the highlights of, who's playing whom, what the broadcast teams are, and we'll kind of comment on that. But Jason, you know, a lot of people, myself, I'm one of these people who like local announcers. I like to hear guys who do the games that, for my team or for teams that I, respect, or people who've just been doing it for a long time and who, you just don't hear about. Like, for instance, Pete Abergast. Pete is the voice of USC football and basketball. Pete's been doing that for 35 years.
Mhm.
Same with Gene Deckerhoff at at Florida State University. Gene has been, the voice of of the Seminoles for that time. I know in West Virginia they've had some wonderful broadcasters that have gone through there as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that those guys are. I always kind of think of it's one of my old coaches, but he covered my high school team for years, and he had
Hmm.
his catchphrases and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And there's all. I think every school's got that guy, right?
Hmm.
That they just you wait to listen to his call. He's got. I remember it was Coach Wilburn was his name, but he used that.
Hmm.
My friends is just another Bulldog touchdown. That was every time they scored, and so
Right.
and he get really wound up about it and stuff. So that was just kind of the one of those things that if you love him and when you get used to hearing it over and over and
Hmm.
over again, you wait for it. Now he doesn't do it anymore. And
Hmm.
I see him on Facebook and stuff. And Coach, I wish you were back on there because I really can't watch these new announcements. But
Yeah.
it's I think those guys are they're I don't know how many of them are still around as far as or how many are replenishing that are starting and going to stay doing that. I kind of wonder about that. But I know it's a tradition that it's. I mean, you think of some of the greatest, Chick Hearn, guys like that, that they
Yeah.
just did it forever, right?
Yeah.
Well, who was the Jack Buck?
Oh yeah.
You know, some of these guys were amazing, and they just, you
Yeah.
know,
I
um,
um
I
I
love
had the
it.
pleasure of working with Jack, and
Wow.
he was a treat. Jack, when we were doing Buccaneers preseason, we wanted to have Jack, Buck, and Hank Stram do the preseason games, and
Hmm.
Jack couldn't do it because the Cardinals baseball, was still in full swing, and he had to deal with CBS. So we ended up with Jay Randolph, who was a buddy of Jack's, and Jay, of course, was on NBC at the time, and so we ended up with Hank Stram and Jay. But I mean, through the years, we know. I know you grew up in the area not too far from here in Pittsburgh, and there are guys like Billy Hillgrove, who has done, you know, uh, the Pitt Panthers and the Steelers for many years, and Myron Cope, who was one of the most unique color analysts I've ever heard in my life, with his terrible towels, and you know Bob Prince and guys like that. So local level, it's always fun to have people, involved in that situation. The other aspect too is those guys who started and began the process because they were just easy to work with. And that's just another situation. We have a little technical problem here with Jason, and we'll just remove him for just a sec while he gets, there he is. All right, he's back. There you
Sorry
go.
about that.
Okay, things happen. It's live TV. Things happen. So no, I was just saying, the terrible towel with Mark Hope. There's just so many. Eli Gold. I mean, Eli, God love him. He had cancer. He's fought his way back, and thank goodness for that. Eli's the voice of the University of Alabama, and for many years NASCAR. So we tend to look at national announcers and we like them, but we tend to forget at times that there are a lot of local and regional announcers, that did well. I'm here in the Baltimore, Washington area, and guys like Chuck Thompson, who was a national broadcaster, but also locally called the Colts and the Orioles for many years. Jim Palmer still does the Orioles, and Jim is, my gosh, he was on ABC's Monday Night Baseball, when they started with Howard Cosell years ago. So Jimmy's still doing those games, not as many, of course, but he's still involved. And that recently Brooks Robinson left. I mean, but Brooks had gone for many years there too. So yeah, there's been on a local level and on a national level, there've been some really cool guys. You brought up Chick Hearn, and now it's kind of funny because Chick Hearn was hired by the doctor of the LA Lakers, which is such a weird thing. I don't know if you remember Kiki Vandeweghe, but
Kiki, he was a great player. Wow.
Yeah, his father, Dr. Vandeweghe, was Dr. Ernie Vandeweghe. And Dr. Vandeweghe was the team doctor for the Los Angeles Lakers, but he was actually kind of like a de facto general manager. And he thought that the Lakers needed a broadcast. And when he moved to Los Angeles in 1960, the team had just come to Los Angeles from Minnesota. And so he thought it was, we needed a broadcaster. Well, the gentleman who owned the team at the time didn't particularly think it was a good idea. I guess they had a radio broadcast. So, Ernie hired him himself, and he got Chick, and Chick had been doing UCLA and other stuff out there. So he became that. And then when Jack Kent Cooke came, which wasn't too long afterwards, and took over the team, Cooke fell in love with him, and away they go. And the interesting part of that is that he and Johnny Most, who was the Celtics announcer, who had that gravelly, deep voice, that kind of thing. It's like,
and he would rip the officials and stuff.
Oh man,
Johnny Most was the man. Right?
He was brutal. He was absolutely he tortured people.
He did.
But the Red Sox fans were, loved him, and not the Red Sox, the Celtics fans loved him. The thing that was amazing on the aspect of Chick was Chick did every game from the early 1960s into the mid 80s, and it was all he did simulcasts. So when they did television and radio, he would do them together. So it didn't matter where you were. And so he did that because Vince Scully did the same thing.
Too for a long time?
No, that was Scully.
Scully.
Chick,
Scully, yeah.
Chick basically just did. He just did
just the Lakers.
The Lakers. Okay. That's all he did. And so he was actually part of the Lakers front office. And I don't know what he did other than the games, but his one of his color analysts was Pat Riley. And
that's right. I remember that they hired him off that team, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. So it's crazy, but you see these guys, and they really do a good job, and they on the local level. Joe Castiglione, I work with Joe in Cleveland. Then Joe got the job in Boston. He's been in Boston now for almost 30 years, and just got the Ford Frick Award. So I mean, these are guys you grow up with, you hear, and you just kind of like go, oh, this is, it's great to have them around, because they're kind of like, I mean, they're the storytellers.
Yeah.
When you need to know the history of that team, you're going to think of Johnny Most with Boston, and you're going to think about Chick Hearn with L.A. and
Harry
and
Carey
from
with the Cubs.
oh my God,
Yeah.
Harry Carey. Well, even before that, Harry Carey with the Cardinals. Harry Carey,
Yep.
he was the voice of Cardinals. The Cardinals had a very unique situation because they had 3 beer companies that sponsored them. So they had 3 radio early on. They had 3 radio broadcasts. So you could pick Jack Buck, who was
a history lesson. This is awesome.
Jack Buck was there doing it for one broadcasting group. Harry Carey was the Budweiser guy. And then I forget the other local beer that was there. And that was Dizzy Dean. So you had Harry Carey, Dizzy Dean, and a very young Jack Buck all at the same time doing Cardinals baseball. So
I had no idea.
Which, by the way,
I only knew him as a Cubs guy because I used to watch WGN.
Yeah, and the funny,
when I was a kid, so I remember him from just the Cubs.
The funny thing on that was Milo Hamilton, who had done the Braves, was offered the job of doing the Cubs. So he left the Braves to go to the Cubs. Meanwhile, because Jack Brickhouse was retiring. Now, Jack Brickhouse was 67-ish when he retired. He was past 65. And so he just said, it's time for me to retire. Well, across town, there was, Harry Carey and Jimmy Pearsall doing the games for the White Sox. And paying very little attention to the game and paying much more attention to talking to each other in those broadcasts. So when it came time to get a new broadcaster in there, there was a groundswell of support for Harry to come, and Harry to be part of the Here we go.
That dumb phone. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. No, I was just saying
I'm loving the story, so I was like,
Nah, don't worry. I was just saying that there's a groundswell of support for Harry to take, to move across and work with, with the Cubs. And it got to the point where Cubs management had no choice. I mean, they basically had to take Harry, and I'm not saying that in a disparaging way. I'm just saying that, the fans were speaking. And so they actually replaced Brickhouse, who was retiring, with a guy who was older than Brickhouse. So Harry Carey gets in there and does Cubs baseball after the situation with Brickhouse retiring. Now, in the odd man out situation here, that was Milo. Milo's like, wait a minute, what am I supposed to do? So they put Milo on radio for a while, and then Milo was hired by the Astros a year after that, and so he went down to Houston. But yeah, Harry came in to replace a guy who was retiring, who was younger than he was. So
younger than him, yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, he did it. He seemed like he did it almost right up until his death, right? I mean,
he would have been. And as a matter of fact, Harry was a character, and the only guy who could work with him as a color analyst was Steve Stone. And God loves Steve Stone. I mean, he put up with a lot of crazy, and they finally.
He was always a little toasty.
It was like he was always getting Harry out of trouble, which was not simple by any stretch of the imagination, and so he was keeping track of the whole thing and making sure that nobody got on them. But Steve's still doing baseball in Chicago, and this time he's on the South Side doing the White Sox games. But there was another guy there in Chicago who was equally as much of a character, but in some regards, because he was with the White Sox, people didn't pay as much attention to him. And he just retired a couple years ago. And, That was Hawk Harrelson.
Oh
And
yeah.
Kenny Hawk Harrelson had that wonderful home run call, which I loved. And that was put it on the board for the Sox, and it's like when the ball go out of over the fence, put it on the board for the Sox. So he had one of the great home run calls of all time. And so did Bob Prince, who had, you can kiss it goodbye. But, we got some games that are up here, and let's take a look at them. We got some games for tonight. Now, the games tonight, Indiana State at Indiana, that game's a 7 o'clock game. It's on the Big Ten Network, Pat Boylan and Brock Vereen. Illinois, Kansas, that's a Big Ten Big 12 game, 7:30 ESPN2. Amish Sharof and Andre Ware are doing that game. So a couple of interesting games tonight involving a couple of Big Ten teams. And in this particular case, we have a Big 12 team too. So interesting stuff.
I think that Kansas needs to kind of carry the flag there, as far as the Big 12 is concerned, because as we've seen that, they kind of had a flop weekend last weekend. We were talking about it on the show this week that for all the stuff that, you've had Brett Yormark saying about, kind of disparaging Texas and OU and stuff, and which everybody's fine with. And I wrote the column and I sent it to you and stuff to talk about that a little bit. But I really kind of felt like, especially Texas Tech going up there and taking a 17-point lead and then dropping like that didn't help them. And then, Baylor loses to an FCS program. So at home. So it didn't look great. At least with West Virginia, they lost to Penn State. And, Penn State's supposed to be West Virginia, right?
And it was a close game. It wasn't.
It was a close game almost the whole way, right? It was a good game. So I think that West Virginia probably got a little better. But Kansas, they had a, and look, Jalen Daniels is already hurt. He didn't make it out of camp. So, but that Brett Bielema is going to have a good defense at Illinois. That's what they did last year. And when's the last time you could have said much about Illinois? So I think it's an important game for the Big 12. I don't know. I'm not positive if Jalen's going to be back or not, but I'll tell you something. Jason Bean has been one of those really good backup quarterbacks. He's gotten a lot of play in the last couple of years because of the fact that Jalen Daniels kind of puts himself at risk a little bit. And so he played quite, the OU game last year, OU had to put up 45 and he was right there with them the whole way. So, for Oklahoma, they're going to have a little bit of a test I think more of a test from SMU this week. But I would say that that's one of the bigger games for Big 12, and then of course tomorrow's game after Texas Tech, kind of gagged like they did up there in Casper, or not in Casper, but in Laramie.
Yeah,
they're gonna have to, but they get to host a juggernaut in Oregon. So I don't know if they can bounce back from that or not. You know what I mean? But it'd be a good time to do it. You're at home; those tortilla chucking Red Raider fans, you get a chance to kind of get behind your team. But that would be another big game.
Well, we got the noon games that you're talking about. Notre Dame is at NC State. That's going to be on ABC. Well, it can be. I don't think, I don't know that NC State's getting the love that they necessarily should be getting. And I don't know. Notre
Dame
lost
their quarterback, but then they also brought in a good quarterback.
Yes,
right?
They did.
And
Absolutely.
NC State just seems to be, they always seem to lose a game they shouldn't.
Yeah.
But they always seem to win a game they shouldn't too.
Yeah.
And they've been right in the mix for the last few years in the ACC.
Sure.
I like NC State as a program. I think that they do a good job. But I think Notre Dame's a little more physical than what we've seen in the past. Their defense is really good. And Sam Hartman, man, he's looked great so far. I guess we're gonna find out a little bit about Notre Dame this week.
Yeah, well, we may find out tomorrow. Sean McDonough on the call and Greg McElroy, two fine broadcasters on that situation. That's going to be on ABC at noon. And here we go. A month ago, if you'd have said Nebraska and Colorado is going to be the A game on Fox Big Saturday, people would have said, what, you've been drinking moonshine. But there's
They were telling me
Nebraska facing number 22, you know, number 22, Colorado, noon on their second straight week on Fox, big Saturday. Gus Johnson, the effusive Gus Johnson.
7 million views last week. 7 million views during that game.
Yep. It was a highly entertaining game. But Fox has them with Gus Johnson, Joe Klatt. Man, that's gonna be Boulder's gonna be rocking.
Duo. It is gonna be rocking. You know, we had I don't know if you've seen David Talks Buffs on YouTube. He's a fun guy. So we had him on the show last night. I had him on Saturday as well.
Mm-hmm.
And man, they are just over the moon in Boulder about this football team and Coach Prime. And
right.
I mean, look at his son Shedeur Sanders is a great quarterback. You got a guy that's the epitome of Deion Sanders. He played 139 snaps in Travis Hunter.
Right.
I mean, good grief. And they didn't blink, you know, and TCU kind of kept coming back at them, and, you know, they kept trading the lead, and you didn't see Shedeur blink. I think that they put the Pac-12 on notice. I know a lot of people still don't think a lot of them, and they think that it's going to be one of those deals where, you know, it's going to be too much for them. But I got to say that the Pac-12 isn't exactly the SEC in the trenches, you know, which is probably where they're lacking a little bit, right? It's not the SEC out there. You've got a couple of teams in Utah and probably Oregon that are going to be pretty good in through the trenches. Aside from those three teams, I think that I think it comes down to quarterback play and skill positions. And if you can make and you've got a guy like Travis Hunter that's going to get a couple of interceptions here and there and has an opportunity to make. I think that the floor for this team is 6 games. I think that's the floor is 6 wins. And I know that won't make Coach Prime happy, but I'm telling you, I feel like if you're doubting this football team and this coach, I think you're doing it at your own peril, because they believe in what they're doing over there, and they've got a great coaching staff, and he's able to bring in some guys that believe that fit their identity. So I'm excited about watching it, and I think it's going to be a fun game.
I'll tell you, one thing I've never done is doubted Deion Sanders. I've started covering him when he left Fort Myers High School and ended up at FSU, where he eventually, the guy who played opposite him on the other side was Tyrone Buckley. Now, they were polar opposites. Buckley would take your head off. Okay, he would tackle you and hit you so hard that, as the old joke would be, your family would feel it. And on the other side, Deion loathed to tackle. So what Deion would do, he had his speed. He knew the route better than the guy running it. And so what he would do at the last minute, he'd either jump the route and intercept it, or he'd just take his hand out there and flick the ball away. Okay. So no contact Deion versus I'm going to kill you, Buckley, on the other side. So I remember going to practice one day to watch practice when we were going in to do a game. And they had a guy by the name of Weegie Thompson, who was 6'7", who was a quarterback and a wide receiver. And so he was running the scout team. And I was on the sidelines on where David Murray, who was a scrub, wide receiver, was running. And they were running against the first defense, right? So David is looking at Buckley and going, I'm doing a crossing pattern. He goes, Ouija never throws the ball to me. He always throws it high. I'm going to jump. Do not hit me. I'm not going to catch it. Just leave me alone. So Buckley looks at him and says, you're going to crossing pattern? He goes, yeah. He says, well, then you don't have to worry about me. He said, why is that? He goes, Deion's got you. He's not going to touch you. So fortunately for him, he's okay. Hey, we got a buddy here. Bring him in. Immaculate. How are you, bud? Welcome to the party. We don't quite hear you yet. There you go.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
How you guys doing
Hey,
today?
what's up, Mac?
We're
How
doing
you doing,
well.
bud?
We were just talking about some games and that we've got here. Let me get this screen out of your way.
I was kind of hiding underneath it. I'm good.
Yeah, you are. The last one on that list of big noon games is Utah at Baylor. That's on ESPN. Bob Wischusen and RG3
Baylor's in
calling
trouble.
the action. Yeah, I think.
You got to watch out for that
They're in
comeback,
trouble.
though, man.
Well, they could bounce back. They
You never
could.
know. Week one can always. You never quite know exactly how a team looks
Yeah.
there going into week 2. But he's probably right. They're probably in trouble.
I think they are too. I really do. And they lost Blake Shapen. Although
Yeah.
that may actually help them. If
Maybe.
you think about it a little bit, he hadn't been great. But there's just something when we went to Big 12 Media Days. There was something about Dave Aranda that was a little. And I think
Yeah.
it's okay to be odd as a defensive coordinator. I'm not positive that it works with 18 and 19-year-olds that you're trying to get as a head coach. And I just there seems to be a disconnect.
Dead
and
on.
it could be Joey McGuire after he left.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I'm not exactly sure what it is, but there seems to be a disconnect, and I don't know. You lose to Texas State. I mean, let's not get
Now-
crazy and think that they're better than Utah.
No.
So-
Texas State, the issues they had
And they are
49 transfers, so you really don't know what you're going to get when you play them.
Mhm.
But
That's fair.
I think Dave Aranda, what would you say? Do you think he's a better off coach in the NFL than he is, with kids that you have to get some energy into? The guy's just so kind of low key.
Yeah, and he's got some. At Big 12 Media Days, he was telling a lot of weird little. He was answering questions with weird anecdotes that it wasn't really landing with guys his age. I mean, he's a history guy, and he's just. I think he's fascinating, to be quite honest with you, but I don't know that it connects with 18-year-olds so much. It's just
not
a
translate.
weird, right? I mean, and I don't know. It seems they've been so schizophrenic just in the time he's been there. I mean, they went from 2 wins to winning the Sugar Bowl in the conference, and then they went 6 and 7, and then now it's. I mean, if it gets snowballing like this now, and they have a good running game. Their defense should be okay, but they didn't really stop anybody last week. And you lose by 10 to an FCS program. I mean, it's tough. You know what
Well,
I mean? I have a hard time believing it.
But Kyle Whittingham, though, is one of probably, in my estimation, which is not necessarily worth much, but anyway, is probably one of the top 10 coaches in the country. I mean,
I got him in the top
year
5.
in-
if you
I would
ask me.
say top 5. What
Yeah.
he does
I
with
think he's a
Utah is
top 5
pretty
coach, man, I'm
spectacular.
telling you.
I mean,
Absolutely.
this is a guy who doesn't get 4-star, 5-star players, but he doesn't care. He doesn't even recruit them.
No.
He's beating you with people that you're looking at going, where did they come from? Now, which is not
Yeah.
to say that they're not talented. They're incredibly talented, but it's just
There.
to say he has this ability. And it's funny because that same situation got this Dan Mullen fired at Florida. I mean, because he wasn't recruiting 4 and 5 stars. Well, that wasn't Dan Mullen. Mullen liked a system, had a system, and liked to use the system, and it didn't necessarily fit guys who were 4 and 5 star players. And when he was Urban Meyer's offensive coordinator for a number of years at Florida, and before that at Utah. And so
Yeah, I remember that.
sometimes when you take a look at Dak Prescott and some of these other people that he coached as a coordinator, and then he coached Dak as the coach at Mississippi State, you got to wonder what is going on. I mean, he then takes the Gators to the championship game. They lose to Alabama, but that was when Kyle Trask put up like 37 points on a very good Alabama team. And so the following year they have problems and they don't go anywhere. And suddenly they're not winning, and they end up at almost 500. And that got him fired. And it's like, wait a minute, Dan Mullen didn't get stupid overnight. It was just a matter of
It almost seemed like as soon as he said that he didn't care about recruiting, it sealed his fate, right?
Yeah.
Like immediately. And I don't know that he necessarily meant that he didn't care about recruiting, but you can't say that.
Yeah.
You
I,
can't say
I,
that.
I think what he meant to
Florida.
say, if I
They're
were his
kooky.
publicist, yeah, if I were his publicist, I think what he meant to say was, I don't care about, you know, the
Star
recruiting the
rankings.
4 and 5 stars as much as I like to recruit guys who are going to fit the kind of play that I've got going on. And so
Yeah, which he would have gotten away with. You know, I mean,
yeah.
they were back. Finally, they were back, right?
Mhm. Well, yeah, and
Is Billy going to stay around, or are they going to get rid of him this quick?
well, they invested a
Seems
lot of money in
concerning.
Billy Napier, so they better pay attention. One of the things that being in the SEC or the Big Ten affords you is the ability to make mistakes, because you can make a mistake in a coaching situation and buy them out. You can't do that whenever you're, in some of the other conferences. It's just cost prohibitive. So you're going to end up carrying the guy for years, not necessarily, unless, you'll give a guy an extension and then you're going to have to buy him out. And that's where the money in the big conferences help. They allow you to make mistakes on a coaching standpoint, but then, if you're lucky, paper over them. And, it doesn't, I think they're going to give Napier a bit more of reign than they would have perhaps at the beginning, but he's got some big name kids coming in 2024, and he's going to have to make it work. I mean, the Richardson deal last year was a bit of a mess because he seemed to be better at pro days than he was in any of the college games he played while he was at Florida. So
No doubt.
we'll see how that goes.
Doesn't it seem like, I mean, if he's recruiting fine, he's running it fine, it almost kind of seems like maybe they need some more coordinators. Like it might be get this man a better coordinator or two. Because if they're getting the recruiting that they're getting, they're doing something right. It's just it's not coming out onto the field.
Well, he's got everybody. I mean, he literally hired everybody that he's got there. He wanted. So, I mean, if you're going to look at it and say, okay, here's the deal. I've got, you can't very much say, well, they haven't given me, all this one. They allowed him to hire a staff of approximately, 60 guys. He's got guys who do nothing but recruit. I mean, they don't even, they're basically like scouts in baseball. I mean,
and they do a great job of it despite how poorly it turns out on the field. So that's what I'm saying. Like, if they could just get their on the field performance figured out, they're ready to go. So I don't know if he's getting rid of him actually helps, because then you got to start that whole process over.
Right.
You do, and that was what I was talking about last week. Because of course you've got the people out already saying, but my thought was watching that Utah game. It was that they never committed to the run. And if you're going to be better than anywhere, particularly when you've got the quarterback they have, I felt like, man, you've got great running backs and you've got big linemen who run the football. And they never commit. I think they had 10, 12 carries between their two biggest ones.
Well, I think at the first half they had less than 100 yards rushing in that game, and one of them was a guy, Etienne, ran for like 25 yards on one play. So
but then he didn't hardly get the ball anymore.
No. What I'm saying is they didn't know. I'm agreeing, but what I'm saying is, they gave him the ball. He got 25 yards, and then it was almost like, no, we're not giving you. Why would you give you the ball again? I don't know. I mean, it was a bit of a mess, but they've got a little time to clean it up.
To make too, man, and it can turn ugly on you real quick whenever you're playing against again one of the best. I think Coach Whittingham is a top 2 or 3 coach overall in the country. I really do. I think that because of what you said, he does more with less. He does have his little pipeline into Dallas where he gets the kids that he wants, kind of those under the radar kids that fit his system, tough kids. And, and it's worked. And I think now, for as much jibber jabber as came out of those fans and even the administration about the Big 12 and the truck stop conference and all that stuff, I think that it's the best thing that could have happened to them was going into that conference. They opened up that Texas pipeline even more than what they already were. And I think that it's the best fit for them. I know a lot of people in Utah don't want to hear that, but I really do. I feel like in my opinion, best thing that could have happened for the youth.
Well, he's actually getting kids out of Mater Dei High School in Los Angeles.
Yeah,
So he recruits real well in Southern California, in Texas, and Colorado. He's got some good stuff. But I mean, he's the kind of guy that when you go into when he's recruiting somebody and he goes into your house, there's a very good chance that you're going to, mom and dad's going to love him as much as you are, or perhaps even more. So he's an old school guy, and I think that's what helps him get through. And I think
worry
you're
about
right.
if he's going to be there or not, right? He's been there for since Urban left.
Job security is not a problem with Kyle Whittingham, and what he's done there is just such a. And I think that part of it is that not a lot of people know about Utah. I mean, they're one of the best kept secrets out there, and I think it's gonna be fun to watch them when they move into the conference.
I think
next year.
USC right
that's
now,
exactly why.
Twice.
Well, that's exactly why
Right.
the move to the Big 12 is better, because you don't know about them. I mean, they're tops in the pack, and people really don't know. And even for recruiting in California, these kids watch nationally.
Right.
They're gonna see it a whole lot more in the Big 12 than they would in the Pac-12. So I think it's excellent for them. And for most of the Utah people that we saw who weren't happy about it, I think they were making a comparison of Pac-12 to the Big 12. So obviously there's some, we don't want to see change, but what we've had come out is the whole talk in Utah was actually the ACC versus the Big 12. They were looking to go to the ACC with Stanford. And in that case, I think most Utah fans are probably happy to be in the Big 12. So, I agree with you. I think that they're in a great spot, and that kind of matches their style. Come in there and actually care about football as much as they do.
Well, even from a fan standpoint, the fans are the same. It's a situation, but when I was doing Big Ten, I grew up on SEC football. Then I went to the Big Ten and did games there, and there wasn't that much difference from a standpoint of the fans. The passion was there. It's just what they served at tailgate was probably the only thing that really is different.
Right.
But yeah, it's a whole different vibe, and I think that Utah and Arizona State, and Colorado already knows what it's like because they were there. That they're gonna take to it, and in some regards, I know that they're wearing the black hat for a while, with a bit of a target on them, fair or not,
right?
I'm sorry.
There's nothing wrong with the heel. You got to have a heel.
Oh, the heels are the best. The heels are absolutely the best.
You're winning if you're the villain, so that's always a good thing. If people don't if people don't like you, you're doing something right.
Right, and so
1000%, I agree.
I can assure you, nobody in the Southeastern Conference likes Nick Saban, but guess what? Too bad.
He wins. No one's sitting there going, "Those Vanderbilt guys, can't stand them one bit."
Yeah, those guys are jerks.
Well,
hate playing them.
Smart guys are just so.
All right. Well, if they're playing baseball, pay attention to them. Otherwise, don't.
In other sports, that might be the case.
Right. Real quick, I'm going to cover your face for just a second. What's that? Oh, yeah, they have. Yeah. They played your Sisters of the Poor twice. Okay.
Yeah, they did. They did.
Quick up there. So, see, these are tomorrow's 3:30 games that are of interest. Texas A&M, Miami, very interesting game. Mario Cristobal has a chance for a signature win. Jimbo Fisher has a chance for a win, which, from his standpoint, he is one of the most loathed people in the state of Florida. Is Jimbo Fisher. Mario Cristobal. He's got this is his chance to prove that Miami is is on the way back. Joe Tessitore and Jesse Palmer on the call for that one. That game's an ABC game. UNLV is at number 2 Michigan. That's 3:30 game on CBS with Nestler and Danielson. Iowa State, always a fun game. 3:30 on Fox with Jason Benedetti and Brock Heward. Of those 3 games, gentlemen, which all good broadcasters on those games as well.
I'm biased on that one. I'm from Iowa myself, so I got to go with the Iowa State game. But I think that Miami Texas A&M game could be the real one right there.
Well, going to Kinnick Stadium is always a fun trip to.
They'll be. I think they're in Iowa State this
Hawkeyes
time.
got revenge on the mind, don't they?
Hawkeyes generally run that one. I think we're more worried about what the hell is our team going to be for this year. So, like our coach, you know the issues going on there in terms of whether or not they're going to have to move on. And well, I think if with the offense goes the head coach, if he ends up having to go for this, I think the head coach leaves, and if he leaves, I think Parker leaves, and so this is a bigger deal than most people realize, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But
I agree. I do. Yeah. I think that and the situation in North Carolina are two situations that I wouldn't want to be a part of. That
one is being politicized to a whole nother level. That is
ridiculous.
That's UNC.
It's the most ridiculous thing ever.
The whole situation is ridiculous, but Bubba Cunningham is taking this, and he knows they're looking for an excuse to go after the NCAA, and so he's trying to make this. He's offering this up to everybody. Yeah. Let's use this.
Let's use this and smash somebody over there.
They're looking for something to go hard at the NCAA so they can get more autonomy governance. So I think that's where that's going.
Well, and I think they're going to end up getting it. Because,
this is going to be a winner for them.
Yeah, I don't think that. I mean, look, if we were taking bets on the NCAA and court cases, they've got the record that Colorado had last year. They are not, it's their attorneys are not very consistently good from that standpoint. But yeah.
But what do they give them to work with? I mean, at what point are you going to make a rule that benefits the student athlete that you seem to care or supposed to care about?
Right.
What point do some of these rules look? What I could tell was that he was enrolled 2 days before this rule was dropped on everybody,
right?
And nobody even knew that it was coming down the pike,
right?
And all of a sudden, it gets dropped, and he was already in. It should have been like, this is a no-brainer situation. Meanwhile, you've got quarterbacks that are moving around every year.
The problem with the NCAA is it's too big to be agile. This is one of these situations where they drew up, specifics on these rules, and this one, due to the specificality of it doesn't fall within the rule. But if they were agile, they could look at this and say, this is one we give an exemption to, because we all know the NCAA gives exemptions.
They've been rubber stamping them for freaking years. Yeah. Now all of a sudden, this is what you stand on?
Well, there's a bit of a fight, in my opinion, between the NCAA trying to get some of the power back that they gave to the autonomy conferences. As you see, like when what the Congress wanted to put together as a plan included a commission that has to answer to the NCAA, which looks over the NIL actions of the autonomy conferences. So there's a bit of a political fight going on, and I think they picked the wrong thing to stand firm on, and it's now kind of turning the tide. It's an ugly situation. It's not anywhere involved with the sports aspect. It's all the political side of this, and
right. So, and takes away from all the fun.
And the kid gets caught up in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, the other part of it that bothered me about the kid was, okay, so he was talking about his grandmother and stuff like that, and that's fine, and mental health, which obviously that's the issue. But the other part of it was pretty simple to me. The Kent State head coach is now the offensive coordinator at CU. Why is it that didn't have anything to do with it? Because your coach leaves, you should be able to leave. It's always been that way.
Right.
That's always been a free deal. So to me, I don't understand how they're doing that. It doesn't even make any sense.
They wanted to put their foot down hard because of the stuff going on between the NCAA and these conferences now, and they picked the wrong time because they're not very agile. They're not. They don't understand like when is a good time to do that, when is not. They just decide to play hardball.
I recommend for some of you guys who are out there who want to watch, go to the drakegroup.org, and I'll put that in the show box below. It's a college sports think tank. It's ran by a friend of mine by the name of Andy Zimbalist, who's a sports economist from Smith College in Boston, and Andy is one of the fathers of sabermetrics in baseball. He's written about 25 or 26 books about baseball and college sports and all about that. And they're basically lobbying Congress to get more autonomy for the athletes. and to make it so that the athletes, get some sort of compensation that makes sense, as well as they were firmly against a lot of this realignment, in so much as they were talking about, well, it's fine for the universities, but it's terrible for the athletes, and you're not thinking about the athletes, you're not thinking about the students, you're thinking about money. And okay, I get that, but at the same time, people forget that college, athletic departments are, basically nonprofit organizations, which, are supposed to be a zero out, making, some of them are making tons of cash, and some of them who are supposed to be making tons of cash are losing tons of cash. So,
that's why
there's somebody. Go ahead.
That's why they're talking, doing. I personally push back a little bit on this as an idea, but I think one of the reasons why they're looking at doing football only type of organizations, whether or not new conferences or whatever,
right,
is so that then they can use the talking point of getting all the rest of the students back into kind of regional organizations for travel. And so with football becoming so national, wanting it to have, playing coast to coast with different teams, that might end up getting separated. And I don't know if it needs to go that far. I just think they need to be a little more imaginative on how the different conferences can begin to schedule together with their teams that are more local to each other.
Right. Well, we will
and
definitely
I would
see.
ask Jim, what was your take on when Justice Kavanaugh kind of came down on him and started all this down the track? I mean, obviously you have the O'Bannon case and things like that going on that they could have probably jumped in front of this a long time ago, but it seems like they stuck a Band-Aid on a gaping wound, and just, it turned into the Wild West. And now you're playing catch up on how do we regulate this and regulate that.
Well, they're not set up for it. It goes back to what you're saying about being agile, right? If you are not set up for it, you're not going to anticipate it. You're not going to, and so you can't lead from behind. And so, I think much of what they do is, for the last 20 years or so, the NCAA has been reactionary as opposed to being a force. And they really haven't been forward thinking on any of this stuff. And they could have been, but they didn't. And so, I don't think that, I think the NCAA is outdated, and there's going to have to be some sort of organization to replace it, because it just doesn't work. And, it's not working for the athletes. It's not working for the universities. It's not working for anybody at this point. And
well, that was my question. Is I feel like is it at a point now that they're only there just to kind of take the heat and to keep it from being labor unions and that kind of stuff?
They're kind of a shield.
Is that kind of where it is?
Yeah, I mean, they're there, but I don't even know that they even know what they're there for. I mean, because they don't have. There's power that they don't have that they need to have, or there's power that they have and they don't exercise it in the proper way. So, what's good of having power if you're not using it properly, or you're not using it at all? And so at that point, I think the problem with, and this has become, we've seen this over the years, the business of sports is now permeated college. Okay. It has always been in college sports, but it has never permeated college sports, or it's never dictated how college sports is run. It now does. It absolutely does. And the chasing of the dollar, be it, the money that this Big Ten has been offering, the money the SEC is offering, whatever it is, in many ways, due to the fact that the NCAA didn't set up guidelines and help put together what made sense that would have kept this from going off the rails. And right now it's off the rails. We are at an inflection point, guys, where college sports as we know it is probably going to go in a very weird and almost NFL style way, where there's going to be, way more haves than have not. I mean, sorry, way more have nots than there will be haves. And the distance between, a team in the American Conference that gets $7 million and a team, in the Big Ten that gets close to $100 million is going to be too large a gap to get across. But at the end of the day, I think there's probably going to be maybe 50 programs in the country that will be making the type of money that will be able to allow them to sustain it. And by the way, we have not yet seen any class action suits from head injuries or those types of things, which could come down the line, anytime. And there's over 110 lawsuits in the working their way through courts, all the way from. People are talking about. If you think about this, right? People are paying tuition is higher than it ever has been in most states. And one of the biggest things that you're paying for in student activity fees is athletics. And yet you as a student have absolutely no say in what happens. You as an athlete have absolutely nothing in say in what happens. And in many cases, as we've seen here recently in realignment, athletic directors and coaches have nothing to say in how it happens.
That's true.
So, the whole thing in the Pac-12, was that the coaches that screwed that up? Was it the kids that were in the universities? Was it the athletes that did it? No, hell, it was the presidents who were, moronic at best. And, if you go into the dictionary and look under the word hubris, they would be in there. They would be. It would be the 12 people that were involved in that. So, if there was a way to screw it up, they did it. And so
at every step, that was the whole thing. It's like one thing after you would have figured that you could have fallen out of bed and got one decision right, just one. And they didn't for the last 3 years.
Well, and there was
it should have been the Big 12 that died.
That was the plan. It was literally the plan to carve up the Big 12. But didn't work.
The problem too was that
they had to screw it all up before it go that way too.
The people who really understood, how this worked, were not the people that they allowed to be the voices in the room. And that's where they made the mistakes. They made the mistakes by trusting people who they shouldn't have trusted. There's a guy by the name of Dan Rasher. Dan Rasher is at the University of San Francisco. I mentioned a few minutes ago Andy Zimbalist being a sports economist. Dan Rasher is the number 2 sports economist. I love you, Dan. I'm not saying that Andy's better. I'm just saying that you're number 2. Dan Rasher at the University of San Francisco does evaluations just like Andy does for the NFL, the NBA, and all the major leagues, and even writes, represents athletes from a standpoint of agents will ask him and Andy to write, evaluate what a Bryce Harper's worth or what a Manny Machado is worth whenever they're putting together. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's like a 70-page book that they give to the general managers and presidents saying, this is Manny Machado and this is why Manny Machado is going to make you, a lot of money, but you have to pay him a lot of money to get there. Dan Rasher could have easily walked in there as an independent hire, evaluated everything, and come to the agreement that the value of your conference is X. Okay. And that's your value. Okay. And it would not have been, and it would have been based on everything that we know now, which is the market value. What is fair market value now, not a year ago, not 6 months ago, now, today. What is that value? Okay. They didn't do that. They literally, one university had one professor who was in economics, who was not in sports economics, but just economics, and brought back and said, we're worth, $40 or $50 million. Well, that landed like a brick because they weren't.
And said, no, you're not.
Well, anybody would have said, no, you're not. Anybody with half a brain. And so that wasn't going to work.
UCLA were leaving. What the crap were they thinking?
But we knew that the Pac was way out of line. Way back when they tried to get Texas Tech, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State, right. And they had 3 of them on the line ready to go. they weren't actually supposed to go for those schools as per the agreement. They were supposed to go for like Iowa State and Kansas
Right.
State, because those lesser schools, their locations were more valuable to the Pac because it gets them central time zone locations,
Right.
whereas they're less valuable to the Big Ten, the SEC, and the ACC because they already have those time locations.
Right.
But the Pac didn't like that. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to jump the line and get the best ones out of there because they've overvalued themselves all along the way. And so that's why it really wasn't a surprise to see them.
Well, that was Larry Smith in that regard. George Kliavkoff, I don't, in fairness, I don't blame George Kliavkoff as much as a lot of people do, because as a commissioner, you work for presidents.
Yeah.
And when you work for presidents and you take them a deal and the presidents say, "Are you nuts? We're worth more."
He
go back in the room. Go back, George. You're not, are you listening to us? It makes it difficult. So, is he absolved 100%? No, of course not.
Yeah.
Could he have been far more creative? No.
He was reasonable.
Well, yeah, and I think that was his problem, was that he wasn't able to convince anybody, or he was.
Well, he couldn't.
Whereas you look at Yormark, he came in and, I mean, look, Oklahoma and Texas were about to hang around for another year in the Big 12 and not have to pay $1 to get out of there.
Right.
And because that's where it was. And Yormark went in and said, "Guys, we got to make this happen, because otherwise, we're just going to lose them." And what good is it going to do for another year in the league? I mean, he got $100 million for 1 year, 1 year to get out. So smart on his part, but it seemed like he's able to make deals, whereas Kliavkoff, he just got shut down all the time, and it's crazy to me that. But yes, the hubris part of it from the Pac-12 is insane. Who was the Seattle Times former columnist? He wrote a really good piece about that.
No, I don't know.
Former Seattle Times columnist. I'll have to find it, but it was really good. It was really good.
The reason I was saying about Kliavkoff was that, and the difference between Kliavkoff and Yormark is, Yormark had 100% buy-in from day one from the presidents. You can have 100% buy-in, man. There's a lot you can do, and I think that was it. And it's when you've got that kind of people who are saying, "Okay, cool, we buy into what you're saying, we get it," okay, versus somebody who, they're going, well, you had presidents all over the Pac-12, messaging in way different ways that, made no sense after a while. It just got to be gibberish after a point. So
believing in their own legend that they couldn't die.
Yeah, and they couldn't believe reality. But if you want like a really good apples to apples comparison to look at what a commissioner truly can do, I would look at Warren versus Petitti. Yeah. Warren totally, with the whole Oregon-Washington thing, now after reports are he was not very good at that situation, and he was not very good at dealing with the networks on it. But Petitti, because of his past, his history, his knowledge, everything, he comes in and he was able to build a coalition between presidents and the networks very quickly on Washington, Oregon. So in regards to Yormark, he's kind of like the same mark as Petitti is, and how to do that. Whereas kind of Kliavkoff and guys like, I dare say Phillips, but these guys, they're not quite as savvy in the business world in order to be able to create these compromises.
No, and to put a button on this one, the thing with Petitti is Tony and Mike Oresco, used to be at CBS together. They know how this works. Tony was with Major League Baseball and worked with the Players Association. So compromise is something that Tony understands, and Tony understands how to do it. And coalition building is yet another thing that he has.
He's the creator of the BCS, so that guy's been around for a long time. Like the guy knows what he's doing.
Well, and he and Oresco are the ones that put together the deal for Turner and CBS to do to work together on the NCAA tournament. So they have some some history with the networks and some history with building things and doing things right. And so there you go.
And the CFP meetings that are coming up at the end of the month, they're going to the Big Ten headquarters where Petitti's at. So that guy right there, he's very quickly come in and shown how if you're the right person at the right position, you can run the show. And if you're the wrong person in the wrong position, you have zero say, like Kliavkov. And it's not really on him as much as a bad situation.
Well, I had the pleasure of working with him on the start of MLB Network, and this is a guy who is a hands-on guy. He's not afraid to try things that other people might push away. He's also not. He's an incredibly good listener, and he listens to everybody, and so I'm sure he'll do fine there. And I think that he was the perfect pick after what was going on with Kevin, which is not a bad slap at him. He got the job.
He got stuff done. It's just
it was sloppy, but he got it.
Yeah. When you got the Big Ten behind you, you could be sloppy. You could just come rolling.
True, that's a good point. Yeah.
But Petitti did some stuff that required more, which
a little finesse.
Finesse and deftness. And that's why I think you're seeing those meetings going there, is because he's already earned that respect with all of his peers.
Right. And he also knows all the network presidents. So that'll make it simple.
Well, and it seems like that's where they're headed is instead of these old athletic director guys that have been around these for all this time. Yeah, I mean, now that the networks run the sport, you better get guys that know how to work with the networks, right? And Yormark, I mean, he knows how to work with superstars. So I mean, he's been great at rebranding as well. So I get it.
Well, let's run through this stuff real quick, guys, and then we can move on for the afternoon. We got some. I'm just going to throw these up here real quick. We got that's primetime games tomorrow. Oregon and Texas Tech. I know, Jason, you're going to be watching that one. Mark Falwell and Mark Heinrich on the call. 2 marks. There you go. Alabama and Texas, that game in Tuscaloosa, Fowler and Curb Street on that call. So we got that and some good ones. So Jason will be all over the Texas Tech game for us. All right. The late game, Stanford at USC. That's 10:30 on Fox. Brando gets to come back from Michigan, where he was last week. Spencer Tillman, Auburn at California. There's something going on there at Cal tomorrow, which I highly recommend. By the way, Dave Fleming, great guy. He and Brian Eiswater on the call. California is having a gold out, but here's the thing: at halftime, they've got 500 drones that are going to mimic what a band would do on the field. They're going to, hit all of the major highlights of Northern California, like the Golden Gate Bridge and all kinds of creative things being done from, these 500 mini drones that are going above the stadium. So I'm hoping
like the July 4th. You seen that on July 4th celebration? It's kind of like that. You mean?
Yeah. So I'm hoping that ESPN, at 10:30 doesn't give us a repeat of 5 different games that we don't care about and show some of the halftime celebration there, which would be kind of cool. OSU at ASU. That's 10:30 game on FS1. Alex Faust and Petros Papadakis on that game. So those are our games.
Light's going to find a way to choke that one away. Watch.
Who's that?
Hokie Light will find a way to choke that one away. Just watch.
That would be.
That's a future matchup right there too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, quick games. Here's the early games on CBS on Sunday. Cleveland, Cincinnati, Ian Eagle, Charles Davis, Tampa Bay, Minnesota, Andrew Catalone, and Tiki Barber, Matt Ryan on the sidelines. Houston, Baltimore, that's Spiro Ditas, Adam Marcelletta, Tennessee, New Orleans. So those are your games on CBS. Your games on CBS late. Philadelphia at New England, Nance and Romo on that one. Miami's in LA to face the Chargers, Harlan and Trent Green on that. Vegas and Denver, Tom McCarthy, the Pride of Philadelphia, James Lofton, Jay Feely on that one. Fox is 1 o'clock games. They will be, they're going to be San Francisco, Pittsburgh. That could be interesting. Joe Davis and Daryl Johnston. Arizona, Washington, Adam Adim and Mark Schlereth on that game. Jacksonville, Indianapolis, Kenny Albert, the ever popular and everywhere Kenny Albert, and Jonathan Vilma. Carolina is at Atlanta. And then the Fox late games, we have Green Bay, Chicago. That's the number 1 game with Burkhart and Olsen calling it. The Rams, Seattle, Kevin Kugler and Mark Sanchez on those games. And then here's our final set of games. The night game on Sunday night, Dallas at the Giants in the Meadowlands. And Monday night, Buffalo and the newly reminted New York Jets. That's your schedule, gang, for the week. If you are into tennis tomorrow, ESPN2 has Sabalenka versus Coco Gauff. That should be a wild one. Coco Gauff played very well in the heat of yesterday and even a 90-minute delay and came away with a win. So we've got Ms. Graf from the United States versus one of the best tennis players in years in Sabalenka. So should be a final at Flushing Meadows. That'll be good. And ironically, all week they're dealing with heat, and they probably are going to get rain the rest of the weekend on the East Coast. So can't win them all. But there you go, guys. Any final thoughts as we kind of get out here on a lovely ish Friday afternoon? I'm looking out the window just to see that nothing's flying by as I'm looking
out here.
Mine's pretty simple. I'm pretty sure Jason probably has a lot better to say about these games, but I'm watching. I want to see how Colorado versus Nebraska does versus Alabama, Texas in terms of ratings. Just pure curiosity to see where the mind of people are at as far as what they're watching, because normally Texas, Alabama is going to blow everyone away.
Right.
But and you had pointed this out, Jim, that maybe the time differentials on those could make the difference. But I'm just kind of curious to see how many people are actually now paying attention to the Deion Sanders story.
Oh, I think as we talked about this morning, I think they'll best the number they got last week, which is 7. Will they make it to 9? Because LSU and Florida State had a 9 something.
Will they make it to 10?
Will they make it to 10? If they make it to 10,
can you get that double digit?
Then Deion Sanders will be a programming executive
every week. Every week, Colorado will be on.
Right.
Well, yeah, because they're going up against the Notre Dame game, right? Because that's a 10 o'clock.
Direct against Notre Dame versus North Carolina State. Yep.
Right. So that's a good question. I think
it's not small.
If you can, you got to look at Notre Dame's got a huge following.
It's on ABC. It's gonna get shown.
Yeah.
One of the things one of the things you need to look at ratings though is they do it in 15-minute increments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's quite possible that, for instance, the high point of the Colorado game last week when they won against TCU, the last quarter of the game went over 10. Okay, so they got over 10.
Right.
But that doesn't. They weren't there all the time. So that's what I'm saying.
People were coming over because they saw how close it was.
Right. You're going to look at an average. So the average is going to come out at 7, whatever it was, 7.1, 7.3, right? Mm-hmm. But that last push of the last 15 minutes of the game, they were over 10. In the LSU FSU game, it was the third quarter, they started to tail off because Florida State was starting to build, a big enough lead that it kind of got to a point where people were just, okay, we've seen enough of this. So because of the 15-minute increments, if you watch, I would imagine that people bounce back and forth between those two games. likely if the game with Nebraska and Colorado is close and entertaining, they may just lay that remote down for a few minutes and get you that 15 minutes you need to get that extra couple of points. So that's, that's where it is. The early part of it, and there's a lot of traffic of games at noon, so we'll see if they can get there. But the good news is that because of Twitter, because of ABC and Fox and everybody else, they will definitely, people will know that that game is going one way or another, and they'll have an opportunity to go and get it. So it'll be fun. It'll be absolutely fun. Yeah. Guys, time for shameless plugs. Where can we find you? Talking about social media. Jason, let's go with you first.
Hall of Fame College Football. It's the @ CFB-pod on YouTube. And then you can find us at hofmedia.us. That's our website that kind of pushes us to everywhere. On Twitter, it's JW_HOF. So yeah, find us everywhere. We're putting out college content pretty much every day these days. So make sure to go over there and check us out.
Jason does a wonderful job, and if you're not following him, you better. He does a fine job. Immaculate, where can we find you, my friend?
Well, right now, I'm just kind of on Twitter X, Immaculate View. We do talk mostly and largely about realignment issues facing that for different fan bases and folks who are kind of curious, because it's rather confusing at times for people who are just kind of starting to look at this right now. Soon to be in the future, we're looking at doing a little YouTube show as well, connected with the Big 12 guys. Then that'll be at Immaculate Review, just to kind of go over things afterwards and just have some live chats and talks there.
Well, I'm excited to see that.
Hey, come on in.
It's got great information, man. Great information.
People kind of been like, "Hey, when's yours?" I'm like, we could put something together, and bringing in guys like Jason, because when Jason talks about some of these teams with his knowledge, that goes over my head. So I'm just always listening to him, going, "Oh, okay, good, learning something here."
I usually just shut up and let him talk.
That's how it ends up with me. I'm just sitting here going, "All right, cool, gotcha, yep,
good," because
he knows so much more about that than I do. But on the realignment thing, it's kind of been an obsession for mine. So I figured every once in a while I have a little thing to share with folks.
Well, it's been a treat, guys. It's been a lot of fun. I greatly appreciate you dropping by today. Spending a nice, it's always nice to spend a little bit of time on a Friday afternoon with some people that you like and respect and enjoy. And I've gotten to know you guys, and it's been a treat to do that. And I know that we're going to, hopefully in the future, we're going to be able to do this a lot more. And I look forward to that. And I look forward to trying to keep, the conversation fun and enlightening. And, it doesn't, we can disagree, but we don't have to be disagreeable. And have some fun with it. So I look forward to it, guys. I greatly appreciate it. Folks out there, we greatly appreciate you spending some time with us today. We know you didn't have to, and we know that you have other things to do, but you just decided to, and we greatly appreciate that. Now, if you haven't had the moment to subscribe, to like us, and hit that bell, please do that. That is something that we would like you to do, and a little bit of a favor for us. And by the way, if you missed it live, that's okay. You can watch it on replay and let us, give us a comment. We'll answer it. That's the kind of people we are. All right. So, guys, have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you next week. Folks, take care. And again, thanks, guys. Greatly appreciate you dropping by.
And thanks
for having us on.